Hello there, welcome back to the Maratha Confederacy Abridged, where last time we're entering the final stage of the campaign, invading India. We fought a few battles, but ultimately we haven't got that far because due to a glitch, I had to lose a major battle, causing my now depleted forces to be scattered all over the place, and we haven't actually taken any territory yet. So we do need to improve things. One measure we can take to slightly alleviate the situation is that in armies that have at least one regular unit in them, we can spam more elephants. So this is our only way to compete with the enemy's ability to recruit units. We can at least recruit elephants and replenish units while we stand around. In the Mughal turn, in they come with a stack that first attacks this group with just 3 elephants in it. Figured that army behind would be close enough to reinforce in this situation, but apparently not. This is a battle where we would totally lose in a manual resolve because they can just shoot us down. But the balance bar is actually kind of okay, so I ended up hitting the auto resolve, and actually we did lose, but we took down a few hundred of the enemy with us. Not that special really. The army that was defeated though goes on to be attacked by a whole bunch of trash. This time the balance bar's a little bit better. It's another case where if we just charged in, we may not be able to kill them all in melee, especially if the general died. Luckily the auto-resolve was really good and we annihilated them, losing barely anything. So that's that, but now we're going to move on to a real battle. A stack comes and attacks one of our more normal looking armies. That said, it's still tons of cav and a load of artillery. They've got some special artillery themselves in this fight, including rockets. So time to take them on in a more regular engagement. To start off with, we're obviously going to want to charge in as soon as possible because they're going to be hitting us with tons of cannons, and as we saw there, with their rockets. They don't appear to be especially powerful, but they've got very good range. Their regular cannons are doing more damage right now. They've also got their mortars, firing their special quicklime shots or something. I'm not quite sure what they are, but they managed to do a bit of damage on our guys on the way in. I've got some units already racing ahead of these guys here. But we are seeing our morale drop down to wavering before we even make contact, which is a very bad sign on our Sipahis because they have quite high base morale. It seems that all this artillery firing and some small arms fire from their gun cav is almost enough to push us back, so need to be careful. Now we're just going to try and hack our way through to their artillery position because taking them out will be a priority, and while we're hacking our way through, they're going to do some friendly fire attacks, just going to shoot rockets into the melee. They don't appear to be that powerful. I think they explode with some kind of shrapnel pattern, but when they explode really close to the ground, I'm guessing that doesn't do very much. So it seems okay for now. Elsewhere we've got some surprising resistance, like these trash guys here, refusing to die as our Sipahis try to break through the line. Luckily we're able to outflank their line on the right. So while we're being pounded by their artillery, it's not going to last much longer. We've got guys already rushing in to take them on. And we've nearly broken through some of the trash there. It's getting there. I'm sure the enemy's friendly fire artillery strategy may actually work to our advantage if they're shooting into the trash fights. But yes, one unit gets through and reaches the line of artillery pieces, so we'll start working our way through those guys. And now the rest of the fight's going to start going in our favour as we just out-hack the enemy, since the Sipahis have decent melee stats. Going to be taking some losses here. I'm not doing any particular micro or cyclocharging or anything, but we do win both flanks and can fold in to start finishing stuff off. The battle realistically would be over already at this stage, but their general was still alive at the back. That was enough even for these trash guys to come back right after everything else was killed. They had to kill them again. So yes, we don't have an easy way to kill their general because he's out of range of our artillery. But at some point he routed. And here is the final result. Lost like a quarter of our army or something. The enemy lost like 4,000 troops. Not too bad, we can replenish after that, and that's one enemy army cut down to size, but there are plenty more where that came from. Before we look back at that situation though, we've got another thing we can do, because a new stack has arrived by sea, and now I started considering should we send the stack to actually go and take Salon instead of landing on the mainland, because this place isn't that heavily defended. We could at least take it and have a base in the theatre. That would make our operations here a bit easier. There's another option too. I realised we could rush east to attack Hyderabad instead of going for our former capital, which was my plan. Just because we know the enemy have tons of stuff concentrated around said capital, we can right now rush over and attack the slightly less defended city over here. because just having any city will be useful, because if we can get like 5 recruitment slots, we can start spamming out stuff, which of course the Mughals are doing constantly, and start to even the odds a bit without spamming elephants, since spammed elephants does have its disadvantages. In this case, I can concentrate enough stuff near the town that we can get this good auto-resolve. The downside to doing this is that a couple of my stacks couldn't get near the town, so they're now isolated, meaning if they get concentrated by the enemy's counter-response, we can't use everything at once. But for now, we actually have a fort under our control, so this is a more defensible location for us, and after some repairs we can start recruiting new units. I am though still going to go ahead with the plan I mentioned, that being to attack Salon, so my newly arrived stack lands. We can't do an attack right away, but we can land next to the town. For some reason all of the local troops are in the port nearby, perhaps planning to go somewhere, so hopefully they'll stay there until we've dealt with the town. In the Mughal turn, they're moving stuff near our new city. We get a pretty good balance bar here, so we can auto-resolve this, and auto-resolving really is the best option, because if we manually resolve a fight where we're relying on spammed elephants, the generals die, which deletes the elephant unit, but in auto-resolve generals tend to survive, so we just lose a few elephants in each unit. So this is pretty exploitable actually. It means you have to have tons of money to make all of the elephants in the first place, but they are pretty good at doing auto-resolves for you. Now after this we see a little naval fights going on in the Americas. We're just going to retreat from this one. The important point is it reveals that Mysore have a large navy with an army in it in the Americas theatre, so we need to keep in mind that we don't have Mysore contained. They can appear wherever they want with that army. Luckily this forgotten fleet that was sitting in the region leaving zone just sails off and gets forgotten again somewhere else. Now we've got a battle on Salon because unfortunately the stack sitting in the docks comes over to attack my landing force, and they're reinforced by the town garrison. It's an even fight, and in an unusual twist we've actually got some infantry to work with in this one. I started off by sending a whole bunch of cav up the right wing, and then running away because we went too close to them and started getting shot. Need to wait for other stuff to be set up before we make any moves here. We've got another load of cav going to be behind their army, and here's our main thrust, some infantry going up the middle in a revolutionary twist. These infantry are the Amazons. They're all light infantry, meaning they have super high firepower despite their small unit size. That will help us out. We get a cheeky artillery snipe while the enemy are setting up, and then we get started really here on our right flank. I just started ploughing into stuff to see if we could get some kills. Got some nice friendly fire with the gunners nearby as well. That will help us out. Our attack at the back was too successful. I didn't notice 2 of my units have taken out the enemy's nearby cav and have stopped. Need some more micro. Other units are going around to take out these newly set up artillery pieces from the enemy's reinforcements. And we've got some more struggle fights where our cav are getting stuck into the enemy's trash but aren't routing them off the field. And here's an annoying situation where our cav are in amongst a bunch of trash and some elephants. And altogether that's starting to put the pressure on us now, and we're seeing our morale is going. We lose this unit in amongst the enemy's elephants. It's probably because we're being hit by small arms fire, by artillery fire, and the elephants give a morale debuff. So altogether, it's actually quite hard to get through this situation. There's more artillery pieces we need to take out, and they have gunners all over the place. The idea was that we'd be syncing up this attack with our gunners attacking from the front, but really I think I charged too early because the gunners are really just now getting into position, and all of our cav are already committed, and in some cases they're in trouble, like right here, where we're starting to get surrounded by a bunch of pikes in melee. Not what we want to see. This rear attack isn't going very well. I've got more guys who aren't being microed properly, and morale is wavering. Our Amazons still aren't really in position since the enemy are turning around to primarily deal with my cav and ignore the Amazons. Here I managed to break through and get to the enemy's remaining artillery pieces. Taking them out might allow our morale to hold. Looks like one enemy unit got too close to our lines and was taken out by a joint small arms fire cavalry charge combo. But back at the artillery, my attack here has failed. The unit attacking their artillery routs, perhaps because some nearby musketeers fired into them. So that's not going very well, is it? This battle's actually starting to get a little bit out of control. We've lost quite a few cav units, and here we're going to be losing another one. Looks like I noticed what was going on and tried to not be fighting their elephants, but it was too late. Our guys rout as they retreat, and we've got these two relatively healthy units at the back who are kind of stuck fighting some enemy cav who just wouldn't rout, so they're not really helping out with the main fight very much. The only upside to losing a bunch of cav is that the fewer cav units I have, the more micro I can do, and we can start doing things like what we just saw there, getting attacks on both sides simultaneously, which takes a tiny bit of micro to work out. Plus our Amazons are straight up winning the gunfight. As I said, even though we don't have very many of them, they can outgun not light infantry units because all of their ranks fire at the same time. So it's like having a very good version of the fire by rank tech, they just annihilate everything. And here's what we really should have been doing the whole time. The combination of guys who've just been shot at and then get charged is usually enough to rout stuff, and we saw earlier in the campaign, you can rout even elite units by just shooting at them a couple of times and then making contact. Really should have been doing that the entire time, and we've paid the price for not doing it. Looks like our cav at the back finally win their fight and can run away just before the enemy swamp them with some axe troops. Here we are a bit later, I kind of reformed and started doing this properly, keeping the cav vaguely near the gunners so that we could just support them. The issue we faced though is that the gunners rapidly run out of ammunition. The downside of being able to fire with all ranks and firing quickly is that they run out of ammo, so we're getting to the point when our troops are just standing there and doing very little. But then again, it only takes one snipe shot from some person who has ammo to hit that morale debuff on a whole bunch of nearby units, so we can still do the same thing where we just plow in and cav everything to death after their morale has been lowered, and after that it works out real well. We fire the last of our ammunition at their general, who annoyingly wasn't killed earlier. He was sitting at the back of the map the whole time, so didn't really get a chance to fight him. Here's the eventual result. We lost nearly half of our troops with those losses, very much concentrated among the cav of course, but the enemy lost a lot more. And a quick auto-resolve afterwards allows us to finish off the stuff at Salon and capture it. So now we've got another base in the theatre, and this is a nice base. Because it's separate from the mainland, it's hard for the enemy to just storm it with 20 stacks, meaning their vast numerical advantage matters a bit less to us holding on here. Back in the thick of things, I'm going to jump into this nice big auto-resolve, and by big I mean small. It's just one of these annoying battles where I can bring 5 stacks against 4 enemy units, an auto-resolvable situation, but it gives us quite a few casualties because the game doesn't like us. I did lay down the safety save there, but I can't be bothered to go back, so we're just going to tolerate those losses. Now my plan at about this point was to start thinking of attacking Mysore. I thought, let's ignore the Mughal Empire and try to just finish off the southern tip, because then at least everything's in one direction. That would make it neater if we defeated Mysore first. So that's the plan. We'll spit out a few more elephants for that and see what we can do. In the next turn here, my troops wandering about in the Americas arrive at this rebel territory in Central America. So we take them down, and instantly we've got this new territory which is of no use to us whatsoever, but now we have it, so isn't that special? We're going to be bordered to the south by our Polish allies for some reason, and to the north it's Mexico, who we're at peace with, so we'll just continue to ignore that. Now back in the action, we need to do something about the fact that when you look at the screen, the longer you look, the more Mughal Empire armies you can see. They're absolutely everywhere in all directions, and that just makes things a bit more complicated. I want to move away and move to the south, as I said, but I thought let's try and clear out some of this stuff first. So the first thing I wanted to do was get some more disposable troops. I didn't want to lose too many of my slow to recruit regular troops like the Sipahis, so I quickly threw out I think a stack and a half of additional elephants so I could start just throwing my weight around in this area right away. We get this auto-resolve battle when I try to move to the east, and we're going to again make use of the fact that auto-resolving battles while elephants are in the army is much more efficient than manually doing it. So we clear out some stuff there, but it's not enough. Let's throw in another stack of elephants and fight this battle. Surprisingly, those nearby enemy armies don't reinforce here. Still really not sure what the reinforcement range rules are. In some games it's the zone of control is reinforcement range. In this game it appears to be bigger than that, and sometimes smaller than that. Overall I don't really know. Anyway, we move on, challenge the next army, and the army next to it doesn't reinforce, so more confusion. Not quite sure what's going on, but individually we fight our way through them. Maybe it's something to do with how many movement points each army has. That would be a realistic setup, it just might be hard to tell. So we can go back having cleared out one quadrant, one direction in which the enemy are coming from. But really we want to send some armies off to start doing my plan of going south, and that's what I'm doing here. I decided to move down the coast with a couple of stacks to go towards the Mysore minor settlement down there and just take that first before we take a look at their capital, which has like 4 stacks of troops defending it at the moment, so don't want to step in there too lightly. During the next end turn sequence, the Mughal Empire is doing this again. They send a navy with an army on it, but all they do is blockade a Scottish port. If they landed it, that could be trouble, but they didn't, and after this they don't, so I'm not sure if we'll come back to that ever. We get a couple of interception chances there. I turn them down and there's no fight. I want the enemy to attack my fort ideally, so we don't want to do interception battles in that sector. Meanwhile, I'm ready to attack this minor settlement, but there's a little catch. I actually have nothing in these 3 groups that can start a siege, because only cannons or infantry can theoretically take forts in this game. So I need to get some infantry down, but my route to that location is now cut off by all these random Mughal Empire groups that are standing around. That means it's time for some more auto-resolve pushes. We can move out, throw some elephants into these small groups, take not very good auto-resolves in order to speedily at least get through this, and get through this with the generals technically being alive in an unfair twist. And after that battle there, 1 army dies and 2 scatter in other directions, meaning we now have a route down to the Mysore siege, and in fact we can get there with this half-dead unit of light infantry right away, so that's going to help us out. We just have to put them in the besieging army. Now it will allow us to bring up the siege UI, and we can ask them to surrender, which they do, and that's that. The siege is immediately over, and that's another region captured. It even has a little bit of recruitment potential, and at last we can start recruiting our Hindu-style units, which we haven't been able to do because they are linked to certain regions. Back in Salon, my army, now replenished, finishes off the Mysore forces on the island, so it's secured. But the main advantage to doing this is that we can now put the army in that ship right there and ship it over to the mainland to help out. So I can land them just next to that territory we just took. And we are going to need more stuff here to face off against the nearby 4 or 5 Mysore armies that I mentioned. So we want as much stuff concentrated as possible. Thought I'd have movement enough to get them into that fort, which would be nice. But we don't, so we'll just stand around. Then I spotted that nearby, Mysore have some troops in 1 boat just to the south here, so I thought we might as well gather up our ships and go to take them out. Figured that since it's just 1 ship we can auto-resolve them, but no, we can't, because it gives me 3 ships lost, even though a lot of my ships were the same or better than their ship. I was just like, there's no way we'd lose ships in this fight. So here's me quickly manually resolving it at max speed. We just run rings around them, shoot them to pieces. They're going to lose a whole bunch of guns and lose their morale, and that's the end of that. We quickly win the battle with pretty much no damage done to our fleet at all. That's more like it, and that denies them the ability to deploy that half stack they had in there. Now, continuing on the theme of naval battles, as we move on, Mysore come at us with a half-stack navy that's carrying a full stack of troops, and we can intercept them while they're trying to land, presumably on the coast. This might be the army we saw earlier. Maybe the fleet's fought some pirates or something, because it has damaged pirate ships in the fleet as if they've been captured. Overall, it's a balanced naval engagement with a chance to take out an army as well, so we certainly want to go for this. I'm using the 2-line setup. 1 line has the main ships in it, and the other line has the lesser, faster ships. And then we'll just sail past and start shooting. The main worry here is that they do have those 2 galleons. Galleons are pretty good, as I recall, with very high stats. But in this case, the galleons are missing like most of their guns from previous fights, and their hulls are in bad condition, meaning they're not going to outshoot our, for the most part, smaller ships. As for everything else, the things behind the galleons are smaller ships themselves. This battle quickly turns into a big mess, because while I like to keep things elegant with 2 lines of ships going around, they didn't really stay together very much, and eventually I thought, let's just forget the lines and start giving all the ships individual orders. So the 2 sides are gonna mesh together. This will work to our advantage because we have way more total guns than them, so just blasting in all directions at point blank range suits us. We can tolerate the hull damage and they can't. and very quickly things start to go in our favour. Here was a case where I noticed this ship's on a collision course with the enemy ship, so I thought let's turn in and make use of Grape Shot, the close range cannon ammunition that kills off the crew. It took a long time to actually turn in to get the shot going, and eventually it doesn't really do anything. I think maybe you have to blow their hull apart a bit more to shoot into the ship with that sort of thing. Eventually we're so close, I just thought, well, I might as well just board them at this stage. Most of their ships are missing crew members, so boarding will be a good thing for us to do in this battle. You can see we don't really need to though. Across the place things are starting to surrender, rout and otherwise get beaten up as we just sort of float around firing at will in all directions. Here we are a bit later, after that boarding action. It actually didn't really happen because the enemy just surrendered once the hooks went in. This leaves only one ship still floating, it's the other galleon. The issue we have here is that the galleons are quite fast, giving the enemy the ability to withdraw from the battle if they want, and it appeared that's what they are doing here. They start sailing away with the wind. I was able to shoot at them enough to cause them to rout, but that's not what we need, because if the battle ends and they still have a ship that's alive, that ship might withdraw on the campaign map and take the army with it, and then it'll land somewhere else some other time. That just means we need to make this ship either surrender or sink. We're going to do the opposite of cutting to the chase. I'm going to cut the chase out. Here we are a bit later after a Xebec finally caught up to the galleon, and I managed to sail in front of it. This doesn't do much, but when I order a boarding action, their ship kind of turns in response, and that's going to stop them sailing with the wind quite so much and mean they're still blocked by the Xebec for a bit. Now the Xebec will move in for the boarding action. I hoped they would just surrender. This is kind of dangerous, but I'm pretty sure routing ships aren't allowed to fire their guns, so while we're right in front of their gun decks with our smaller ship, nothing bad's gonna happen. Well, at least not when it comes to the enemy's guns. And I say that because you can see I've got other ships just firing on this situation quite indiscriminately, hoping the enemy would surrender faster. And what we eventually see is as the boarding happens, the enemy do surrender on contact, but at the last second another volley of allied cannon fire comes in. And if you look below the victory message, I think what happened is a cannonball went right through the big line of soldiers clipping into each other as they wait at the edge for the boarding to happen. So we pretty much killed half the crew of the Xebec in the final 1 second of the battle with massive cloudy explosions of blood. Good move anyway. We captured most of their fleet, so we're going to take them on, we'll repair them up. We can always use more ships in this sector because there are plenty of enemy trade ports and trade routes to go and attack. And that's an enemy army down. Unfortunately, there was another fleet with another army. This time it lands with no chance to intercept, so we couldn't stop them, but at least we took out half of their returning reinforcements from wherever they were. That'll be the end of this part for now, as we lose more ships to pirates in Brazil. I'm not really bothering with the trade nodes at this stage in the campaign because we just don't need them. We make so much money off tax that I'd rather spend my time playing, focusing on the war, so not doing much naval stuff. And yes, this is the end of this part. We finally got something of a foothold here. I think we're still facing a decisive showdown with Mysore and probably with the Mughal Empire as well. I don't know how much further I want to play. I want to end this campaign soon. Basically, I want to get the India situation to something where it looks like we would win if we ploughed on enough, so perhaps securing half of India or something like that. We'll see how far I can get in the next part, well, if things don't go disastrously wrong, which they still might.